So at Casa Santina Maria Vineyard in Sonoma Valley, this is one of the vineyards, actually one of the very first sort of quote-unquote project vineyards that we took over starting in 2011. So we're now going into year 6 of this. And this vineyard, you know, had a lot of the issues that a lot of old vineyards in California do, in that there's a lot of sort of not necessarily benign neglect, but perhaps a lot of deferred maintenance. The core of this vineyard, the bones of this vineyard, are incredibly good. It was planted in 1905. The people who planted the vineyard actually worked at what was then known as Madrone Ranch, which is now Bedrock Vineyard. And so they bought this land and developed it. And the vines are planted in 1905, and it's a very mixed vineyard. But the problem is like all vineyards, people probably for 50 or 60 years never replanted vines as they died off out here. And so when we took over the vineyard, not when we took over, when we came into the vineyard and start working with it, you know, there'd be these great, beautiful old vines, and then every other vine practically, there's just huge mounds of rootstock where the grapevine, the scion, had died off and the rootstock was just allowed to grow out. And the problem is like when we took it over, 55% of all the vines in the vineyard were missing. So the vineyard owners are wondering why they are only getting 1 or 1.5 tons per acre, and it's because, you know, they're really getting 3 tons per acre, but just half the vines weren't in production. And that's all the difference between making an, you know, an economically sustainable vineyard and one that's, you know, no longer sustainable. So what we've done out here is we've overseen the replanting of young vines in the missing spots. So I'm standing in front of one right now. And these are now 5 years old, and they're finally starting to come into production. And the hope is that over time, we'll see better balance in this vineyard. The problem with when you have a lot of misses is that the vines that survive all of a sudden no longer have the competition from the other vines around them. So they get really big and outsized and want to put out too much crop and are too vigorous. And then of course, because their roots are going everywhere, it also makes it much harder to establish the younger vines who have to be, you know, starting to push out roots in pretty hostile circumstances when you've got a lot of old mature vines trying to, you know, steal resources. So we did a really, you know, careful job of getting the younger vines started out here, basically put in rootstock, let it grow for 2 full years. And so we got a really, really good base, then grafted on top of that, and then gradually took it up the vine, where we're now starting to establish the head, the top of the vine, basically, because these will be head train vines like the rest of the vineyard. And my hope is over time, you know, this vineyard will come into balance and be as good as it should be. The vineyard next to it is a very famous vineyard, and it was once part of this vineyard called Samsel Vineyard, which went into Rosenblum Maggie's Reserve. So we know what the potential quality is, but it's like all things in these old vineyards, you know, it takes a lot of time to kill these vines off, but it also takes a lot of time, and sometimes it's just time to restore them. So, you know, I'm hoping in, you know, another 5 or 6 years, we get to the point where this is a consistent vineyard designate for us. But we've never actually vineyard designated this for public release. It always goes into our old vine bottling. And I think that that's one of the reasons why our old vine bottling is so important, is it allows us to work with vineyards like this and allows us to pay the vineyard owners what they need to get this work done, and at the same time gives us a place for that well. You know, it's right now it's a 7 out of 10, and we're really hoping we can get it to be like a 9 out of 10. Yeah, that's just one vineyard to be redeveloped. And it's crazy because we're right in the middle of Sonoma Valley. We're not in Lodi, we're not in Contra Costa County, we're not in Mendocino, we're not in some outlying area. I mean, we are in the heart of California viticulture, and, you know, Arnold Drive, one of the main thoroughfares of Sonoma Valley, just roars right past this vineyard, and people don't even really see it. We're hoping that it does good things for us.